What's up, guys? So today on the podcast we have David Garmo. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu and a fairly high level competitor. He's a guy where when Eugene and I are making lists of people to talk to, at some point it's like I don't necessarily have who do I want to talk to, like because that kind of thing. It's not always there, but there's people that I like watching compete. I'm like, let's try to talk to those guys. And,
Yeah.
we started sending out messages and I've got my little list together because that's really what I determined. I was like, I want to talk to guys that I enjoy watching compete or whatever,
Yeah.
or people from different niches that I find, or different, when I say niches, like different subject matters that I find interesting. So every now and then you may get a random guest on it, but he's a fun competitor to watch. He's aggressive. He goes for it, uses a lot of front headlocks and guillotines and things like that. And at the time of recording this, he is getting ready for the ADCC trials. And so he'll be doing that. And we talked to him for a good long while, about 2 hours.
2 hours.
About 2 hours. Yeah, he was a fun guest. Just flowed, and then all of a sudden I looked up. I was like, oh, it's been 2 hours. So again, hopefully you guys enjoy this podcast. There's several takeaways from it that I think you could use for your training. And again, it's a fun one. So we'll get into it. Thanks to our sponsors. Charlotte's Web. For someone sent me a message and they were asking about like what my sleep routine is, because they're having a situation where they get really, what's the word? They have trouble winding down at the end of the night for training. So I've got kind of a sleep routine that I follow, which is I start off, I'll take a shower, I get out, I'll do some deep breathing, and like on a foam roller, just open up my chest a little bit and do some deep breathing. Then I'll go into bed. By the way, my phone at this point is already on the charger. It's already in like quiet mode, and it's got its alarm set or whatever. Yeah. And then I go sit at my bed and I read for a little while. And then after I read, I just kind of wind down. But the shower, a little bit of deep breathing, stretching, book reading, and no phone time right before bed has been really useful. And before I take my shower, I take some CBD. For whatever reason, if I take CBD too late, like right before I go to bed, I get groggy the next morning. But if I take it a little bit before, like for instance, I took it at like 9:30 last night, and I was in bed by around like 10:30 ish.
Yeah, they said like I think a half hour. It's like you can take it within like a half hour or something.
And then within from there, and then I woke up at like 6:30, felt great. So that's kind of my sleep routine. And again, I encourage anybody to who hasn't used CBD to give it a try. I'm a big proponent for it. When I first heard about it years ago, I was like, I don't know about this stuff. Sounds like snake oil to me, right? Sounds like some random thing that someone's trying to push that's in a bottle. But after using it, I was like, it's pretty good. And after meeting the people that make the product and hearing like how passionate they are about it and how the links that they go through to make it better, I've been sold. So again, if you guys are interested in CBD and you'd like to try it out, I encourage you to check out Charlotte's Web. They are one of the premier CBD companies around, and they make a fantastic product. You can check them out at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu. Save 15% on the order. If you've never tried it before, I would encourage you to get like one of the tinctures. It's probably the most cost-effective one. Get one of the tinctures and just do your dose for a month and see how you feel in that. Because everybody's bodies are a little bit different, but it takes a little bit to get into your system for sure. But again, if you are consistent with the month, you'll be able to definitely tell if it's going to make a difference to you or not. And again, it's something that I definitely include in my regimen in relation to things like recovery and everything else. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Epic Roll. We're currently working on, and I gotta send Matt a message actually later today. Currently working on a Jiu-Jitsu rash guard and shorts. I'm a fan of his products. I've been wearing those Velcro-less shorts. I love them. And again, he makes a good rash guard too, and he makes good products. And the products always have good designs, and I haven't had any problems with the quality. And so I've been using several of his products since 2000, was it 18, 19?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been a while. And so again, big fan of Matt's stuff. And so if you guys want to check out any of his stuff before the rollout of the Jiu-Jitsu rash guards, at the time of filming or recording this, it's like November. So looking towards probably the end of November, maybe depending on what works for Matt. But if you guys want to check out his stuff, you can go to epicrollbjj.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu, save 15% on the order. And again, besides this, just the Jiu-Jitsu stuff that we're talking about, he's got a lot of t-shirts, shorts, gear to use for training, apparel to wear when you're not on the mat. So if you want some like jiu-jitsu shirts or something like that, he's got them. And then he also has gis as well. So he's got a ton of different stuff. And again, everything has good looking designs that I like. You can check them out at epicrollbjj.com. Promo code is jiu-jitsu. And then thanks to our sponsor, this is one of our new ones, Become Stronger. Become-stronger.com is the website. Promo code is jiu-jitsu. It's 10% off. Paik makes maces and other different types of equipment, and he does custom orders for basically things that are made of metal. But he sent us some maces, and I'm going to probably do a video on it, like, and just I've used it a little bit and for like warm-ups and stuff like that, and then doing some different rotational stuff. But I was thinking about just testing it out and just busting through some stuff, just finding something I can just bang that mace against,
break some stuff,
just go break some stuff with the mace. But again, if you're interested in getting a hold of some maces or, some of that other type of, odd object type stuff, check out his website at become-stronger.com. The dash has to be there because Become Stronger, that would have been a hard one to get.
Ooh.
That's probably one that some guy like, did you ever remember those guys that would like get the URLs and just would sit on them?
Yeah, and then like they sell them eventually.
Yeah, that's probably one of those.
Mm-hmm.
But again, check his stuff out. Again, I'm going to do a little bit of work with the maces and kind of play around with them. It's something I haven't done a lot of work with.
Yeah,
I have friends that love maces, and I've been around guys that have used them, and it's very different. But there's some different warm up stuff that I'm going to try and get a feel for them, and I'll post about it and let you guys know how it goes. But I'm definitely going to go and like beat it on a tire or on the side of something.
I like that. I've been playing with the 10-pound mace, and I've really enjoyed using it. Like, I think it really activates my shoulders. I feel kind of nice and loose, and shoulders feel warmed up. I like it. It's just something different. It's just a different way to really warm up.
Yeah, I used the mace. I was doing a press day the other day, and I used the rotations.
Yeah,
I used those before I got into the press. It felt good. And also, guys, if you think that it's a good idea to have a jiu-jitsu game plan when you're either rolling or when you're competing, or if you would like some strategies on how to drill and learn jiu-jitsu, whether you have control of your training, open mats, or none of that, then I give away 2 free ebooks on my website. If you go to the website jiu-jitsu.net/join, JOIN, if you go to that website, there I give away 2 free ebooks when you join my Chew Crew email list. So if you join the email list, you get the book sent to you, you get a hold of them, you can read them, check them out, implement the strategies. In the game plan book, I basically break down my jiu-jitsu game plan, and then I help you make one. And then in the drilling book ebook, it's more based upon how to implement techniques from the point of learning a technique in a more passive form to using it in a more active form during a roll. And I kind of sort of show you the steps that I would take to try to do that. And you can get both of those for free by joining the email list. And with the email list, I know because some people are like, they don't like the idea of spam or whatever. I don't spam people. I message people Monday through Friday. And if you ever want to unsubscribe, there's a little button on every email. You press that button, boom, you're gone. I'll never message you. I'll never message you again. Scout's honor. And if you guys would like to support the podcast and get your hands on some additional content from the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. On that page there, once you become a member, you get access to just a ton of different content from over the years, from all the guests that we've had. Every guest has a little clip from there, as well as some podcast extras that have never been released, conversations with Eugene and I going into lots of different stuff. And there's also some videos on there like rolling, narrator rolls, competition matches, things like that. So you can get any and all of that at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And guys, with that said, let's get started with the podcast with David Garmo. How's everything going, dude?
Everything's good. Everything's good. I'm just packing and stuff. Going to ADCC Trials tomorrow. Leaving tonight, but competing tomorrow. Just focus has been on that.
Yeah. How are you feeling for that?
Actually, I feel the best I've felt in the last 6 months. I feel really good. I had some. I banged myself up a bunch. The right in the middle of the year, I had hurt my knee, blew my orbital out. Got COVID, tried to compete all through that whole time, but just wasn't the same. But now I'm finally I'm back. I'm feeling really good.
How did you, because I just got over it. Like I'm back to where I finally have my scrambles back.
Mhm.
It took me a little bit. How old are you?
31.
So I'm a little bit older, but how did COVID affect you? I'm curious.
So I didn't even know I had COVID. I felt a little run down, but like nothing crazy. Then I lost my taste and my smell, like a lot of people did. And then, that being said, like I wouldn't have known I had that. I thought it was just bad allergies, especially this time of year is like a month and a half ago, really bad allergy season for me. So I didn't really think too much of it. But after all that stuff, I took I had to take whatever it was, 10, 11 days off.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like shit coming back to the gym. And everybody, all my students, or many of my students are very competitive. They're working to be competitors like myself, and the rest of the instructors. So they didn't give me an inch. They were beating my ass up and down the mats. And there's no break. Like they don't, they're going their hardest on me like I would expect them to, whether we were training, in some other event or just practice or whatever. But I couldn't, 3 rows and I was dead. Dead. Yeah. And then I had to fight Mateus Denise, right at that, right in that time, like right before I knew I had COVID, I had to fight Mateus Denise. And I was just coming off of eye surgery 3 weeks before. And so I was like I didn't know where my body was. I just was like, I'm going to do it and we're going to make it happen. And, so I'm now finally feeling good. And it's been about 2 months.
Okay.
So now I'm finally feeling good. I can go through full training sessions. This past Wednesday, I had the best training session I've had in probably 5 months. I felt fantastic. I felt like I can go forever, which is perfect because I'm going to need to go forever tomorrow at the trials, but yeah, that's how I felt on it.
Yeah, no, I was curious because I had the same thing where like I felt a little run down. It wasn't that bad. I had 2 days of kind of like felt off and bad, and then that was done with. And then when I came back, my wind like was just not there. Like a couple rounds in and I was like gasping, which is not normal for me, and and then I remember I competed at the Worlds. I was already signed up. So like, I'll do it. And like first match in, there's one of the guys that was watching the match on Flow was laughing because he's like, we knew you were tired because in the first match I'm already like taking a deep breath and winded and stuff like that. So I was curious. It's good that you're feeling better. I'm glad you're back to what you'd consider like normal, getting ready for the trials. Are they going to split that? Because I was looking at it, it's pretty big. I remember doing it in 2018 and like I had like 60 something guys in the division, but they were saying the brackets are even bigger this time. Are they breaking that up into 2 days or is it going to be a 1 day thing?
It's 2 days. So I'm doing 88 kilos this year. In 2018, I did 77 and there were 77 people in my division.
Okay.
77 kilos, I believe, as 200 this year, and 88 kilos is 155. So what they said was, so at 155 competitors, it's either 7 or 8 matches, depending on if you get to buy. They're going to go all the way up until a round of 16. So for myself, it'll be 3 or 4 matches first day, and then the second day will be 4 matches to win.
Gotcha.
So it could be 7 or 8 matches to win the entire event. I mean, in the most stacked event, I mean, with the amount of people, especially, it's gonna be intense.
Well, how do you mentally prepare for that? Like, you already anticipate it could be a very long couple days. Like, what are you doing in training? Also, kind of help kind of prepare yourself and callous yourself to get after it.
I remember Naga. That's it. You just got to remember Naga events. They go till midnight. You know what I mean? And that's about, it can't be worse than that. Honestly, when they told me, well, when I found out, they didn't tell me specifically, but when I found out online that they were going to do the round of 16 on day 2, I'm like, that's perfect. I can go 4 hard matches in a day pretty easily. 8 hard matches in a day, competing, that's very difficult. But 4 and then another 4, that's perfect for me. I like that. I'd much rather have that. I know there's some people that would much rather finish it all in one day, maybe because the pressure is there. But for me, I mean, I've been doing this for so long. I've got, 500 matches in jiu-jitsu and then another couple hundred in other grappling arts. Like, this is normal for me. I love to compete. So, I just don't want to do it all at once. My body may not be able to handle that as well as splitting up in 2 days.
Yeah, and at 30, you know this because you've been competing and grappling for a while. You start to get a little bit older, and you can still push it, but the recovery is a little different as you get older. The one thing I will say about the ADCC, what I liked about what they did with the trials was, if you go do an IBJJF tournament, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, I mean, it's like they put you guys over there, and Nagas are terrible about this too. And it's like, just run the divisions, get those guys in, right? You got like 6 minutes in between matches. And I mean, that's tough if you have a battle with someone else and you don't have time to recover. Whereas I remember doing the trials 18, it was like we had like 45 minutes to sometimes an hour in between matches where you had time to relax, get your fluids back in. And then, because I remember I had a friggin' scrappy match with Devontae, and I was like coming off I had the forearm burn and everything else. And if had they given me 6 minutes and put me back out there, I would have been like, just not with it.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it just depends on the day and the match that you just had. There are times where I love getting right back into it because I'm warm, I'm feeling great. Sometimes the come down is too much. But if you have that, like I said, you have a match with Devontae, and it's go, 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 you're going to need 20, 25 minutes to feel okay. An hour to feel much better. But for me, I like to get it going. I like to go, go, go. So if I'm going to have 4 matches tomorrow, I hope that they're within an hour and a half of each other, like the whole thing. It's not going to be that way because there's too many competitors in the division. But that, for me, that would be great because I can go, match, 10, 15-minute break. I'm ready to go again. I'm ready to go. We all train with a 30-second to a 1-minute break, right? We all train that way. So it's not out of the realm. It's just how effective are you going to be? But with 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, I feel pretty good. Any longer than that, and I have to warm up again. I hate warming up. I know I have to do it now that I'm older and stuff. But I remember the days when I was 21 years old and I just walk onto the mat from the parking lot and I immediately do like a hard round the gi. And I like that. I used to be able to do that. I can't do that now. I have to do like a 15-minute warm up just to get moving. Which I don't like to do too often, too many times in a competition day, because I mean a warm up will drain you a little bit if you're doing it too often, I guess.
Yeah. What would you do? Like if you had 45 minutes, how would you structure that? Like just thinking about it right now.
It depends on my match. Okay, so if I had a really hard match, just moments before, I would allow myself to recover. I'd probably lay down somewhere, shut my eyes, get my breathing under control. And then depending on how long I needed to get my breathing under control, it might be 3 to 5 minutes. It might be 10 minutes before I'm starting to get that heart rate down. I'll start moving around at the very least at a walk, moving my shoulders, moving my legs, just making sure that there's nothing, because sometimes you don't know right after the match if you hurt yourself. And you want to know that before you go into your next match, not to stop from doing that match, but you want to know what you can do and what you can't do and what you have to avoid. So I'll check myself. I'll check typically my shoulders, my knees, and my neck. If all that stuff is moving pretty good, I'll just keep that slow moving going. I might even just, do a very light version of the warm-ups that I normally do, half the amount, because I'm already sweating. I'm sure at this point I'm soaked, and then go into my next match. But I don't like to watch matches while I'm competing. I try to avoid that, even though sometimes I get caught in it because I'm a jiu-jitsu fan. I love to watch jiu-jitsu, and so sometimes I'm like, oh, you have this guy over here, he's competing, I want to watch that. Then I've got to pull myself away and say, no, I've got to compete in however long, But it's also so rare to know when you're competing. You could think you have 45 minutes. That could be an hour and 15 minutes. It could be 2 hours, or it could be, hey, the next match ahead of you is not here, go. So it's not as easy when you're in a tournament setting. Super fights are a different thing because you kind of know, you get a good idea ahead of time. But tournaments, it's a crapshoot. You never know.
Yeah, it's tricky trying to get that right timing for it. It's always hard to pinpoint it. So, man, I'm curious. You've had a lot of matches. How did you get your start in grappling and in martial arts in general?
Well, I started martial arts when I was 5. I did like American karate or American kickboxing. There was actually a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program at the place that I started at. This is back in 1995. The guy was a blue belt under Helson.
Where was this?
In Michigan.
Michigan, okay.
Yeah, he was a blue belt under Helson. That whole deal where like you watch the tapes, you go to a seminar, they give you a blue belt. That's how he got his.
Okay.
And so we learned the most rudimentary kids jiu-jitsu for 1995, which you can imagine what that would look like. So I did martial arts. I was always exposed to jiu-jitsu from as long as I remember. But then I didn't get back into it properly until I was 18. After I graduated high school, I had wrestled in high school, wasn't very good, but decided I didn't want to work a regular job, didn't want to go to college. So that's when I started doing jiu-jitsu seriously.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was pretty much from day one.
So did you say you weren't very good in wrestling in high school?
No, I was a terrible wrestler in high school.
Really? Because I assume, because I've watched you compete, and I'm like he looks like he's got some wrestling in there. You're hanging on the head all the time and everything else. So I figured you'd done a little bit more wrestling. Yeah.
My wrestling got good because I got lucky. I was able to train with really good wrestlers while doing jiu-jitsu. Okay. And I had that syndrome of being the guy who sucked at wrestling, and then state champs would show up to the gym who wanted to, learn MMA or whatever that was. And it was my sole goal in life to take them down. And that pushed me, much further ahead. But I've gotten the opportunity to train with multiple Olympians, world medalists. My wrestling coach now is Jake Herbert, who is a 2-time NCAA champ from Northwestern. So I've got incredible wrestling tools that I got to use and got to learn from. And so it made my wrestling a lot better. So I love wrestling. I love all grappling arts, judo, wrestling, submission grappling, takedowns, those types of things. I love it. It's my favorite thing to do.
Why'd you kind of hone in on jiu-jitsu? What was it about jiu-jitsu? I always love asking this question because it's different. There's a lot of similarities, a lot of uniqueness, but what was it like that attracted you specifically to jiu-jitsu?
So I didn't know it was going to be jiu-jitsu, but when I was like 16, 17, I had, whatever cell phone I had at the time. My wallpaper was, yeah, it could have been. It was probably some LG, some flip thing, whatever. But my wallpaper was the UFC championship belt, the lightweight championship belt. I thought I was going to be like, my goal was to be like the next Matt Hughes or BJ Penn. Matt Hughes was my hero at the time. And I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to fight MMA. And I had already wrestled, so jiu-jitsu made more sense that I would probably be better at that right away than stand-up. So when I turned 18, I went and found a gym called Mass Gym, and they had an MMA program. And so that's where I started doing jiu-jitsu, and I did Muay Thai there, and then I participated in the MMA program as well. And then I realized that I didn't like to cut weight. I don't like to get hit. Kicking isn't as fun as it looks, and getting kicked is less fun. So, and competing is like my biggest passion in life. I'll compete in anything. You give me some weird niche thing to do, I'll compete in it. As long as there's a competition, I'm good with that. And I could do jiu-jitsu way more than I could compete in MMA without having to cut weight, without having to do the horrible things you have to do just to get into the cage.
Well, just the damage you take in a fight. I mean, gosh, you could have a 2-minute fight and still get like all kinds of damage accumulated just from getting hit or punched or whatever, where you can go compete like every weekend if you wanted to in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. And at the time, this was 2008 when I started, Michigan was like, it was like terrible. There was no oversight. There was very little professionalism when it came to MMA. So you never knew what kind of card you were going to get on. I had fought one time, but I had been to like 20 cards up to like my first year of just doing MMA, and I'd go watch my teammates compete. And it was horrible. Like you never know who you were going to fight. The people didn't make weight. People, had communicable diseases literally in the cage because there was no, we didn't have any oversight. There was no like a commission at the time. It was literally the wild, wild west. And all of that turned me off. It's like, why would I do this? I can just go to a local jiu-jitsu event in Chicago. I can drive 4 hours. I can go to Toledo, or I can go, if it's in my backyard, I can go in my backyard and I can compete all the time. And something that I'm better at, that I enjoy more. And I don't get hit in the face. I don't like getting hit in the face. That's not preferable for me. I know some guys, they love it. Some of my friends, they love it, but not me.
Yeah, I didn't mind like the leg kicks hurt me more than the getting punched. Like the leg
Mhm.
kicks, God, you'd be like we'd get done training and walking funny for like 3 days.
Yeah.
I didn't see. I fought for a little while. I had a few more fights, and man, I just couldn't deal with the atmosphere because
Mhm.
like you go to a jiu-jitsu competition, and every now and then there's some turd burgers, but for the most part, everybody's pretty chill,
Yeah.
But then you go to like the MMA stuff, and I'm in my head, I'm like you, I'm a competitor. So I just want to go
Mhm.
test myself in different forms of competition. And that's
Mhm.
the way I look at it. I'm a prize fighter. We're gonna go do this. But then your opponent, like my very first pro fight, the dude was like covered in crazy tats. And I went to shake his hand at the weigh-ins, like, all right, man, because we're getting paid for this. We're getting money.
Mhm.
So I'm figured like,
Yeah.
this is gonna be cool. And like I extend my hand, he like doesn't shake my hand. He just puffs his chest up at me and says, like, kind of nods. And I was like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow, bro. Like, geez, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um, so, I just didn't like that atmosphere because then when I'm fighting, I'm not really enjoying it. I'm just trying to like pulverize this person because I'm mad at him. Whereas in
Mhm.
jiu-jitsu, it's a lot more fun and creative and it's exciting. It's a cool environment.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like I said, I went to so many of those amateur and some professional shows in Michigan at least, and it's like the worst people
Mhm.
for the most part. And it's a lot of it's the fans, the people who decide to actually go to these things, not necessarily the athletes themselves, but
Right, right.
it was actually a similar thing. The one fight that I had, the coach of the opponent came up to my coach and said, "Hey, we don't shake hands." Um, okay,
Okay. Yeah.
all right, and that's fine, I guess. But they shake hands after they lose, so it's like it's like you pick one. You know what I mean? Which one are you gonna do? But it is what it is. I
Yeah.
don't know. Like, but I decided it was after that first fight that I had. I decided this is not for me. I'm better at jiu-jitsu. I enjoy it more. So
Mhm.
let me stick with this, and I can do it more often. You can do 20 tournaments a year if you're really motivated and you maybe if you're young enough too. If you have the physical capabilities of continuing to go throughout the year, traveling
Yeah.
every other
Mhm.
weekend. Um, but I did that on multiple occasions. I was able to hit like 20 tournaments a year, like 3 separate years. And it was great. It was so fun. It was amazing to do, and it's during the day. So like
Mhm.
it's not the night crowd; it's the day
Yeah,
crowd.
yeah.
It's a little bit better. In my opinion.
Where did you develop that love for competition? Like you say, you'll compete in anything. Like, was that something just as a kid you loved testing yourself or trying new things? What was that from?
I think I've always been competitive. I don't know where it came from because nobody in my family is this way.
Hmm.
Nobody in my family plays sports. Nobody, not one. And when I say family, not just immediate family. I'm ethnically Chaldean, so we have like you probably have no idea what that is, but
What is it now?
Chaldean, Chaldean. It's Iraqi Christians from these tiny little villages
Oh,
throughout northern part of Iraq.
okay.
There's less than a million of us, like on Earth.
Wow.
Right now, especially after ISIS did their thing.
Yeah.
But we have incredible amount of family. Like I've got hundreds of cousins, actually that are my cousins, not just like I say they're my cousins.
Mhm.
And nobody played sports. Nobody. I'm like the only one. And my mom liked Jean-Claude Van Damme, so she put me in, you know, martial arts when I was 5. So
That's why I joined
I,
martial arts too. I
That's
saw
right.
blood sport and I was like,
that's
sign me
right.
up.
There we go. There we go. That's the same thing. She saw Bloodsport. She watched Lionheart, I think, and
Yeah,
she's like, "All
Lionheart's
right,
great.
let's do it."
Classics.
You know. But I'm thankful for it. But I don't know. I don't know exactly where it came from. I've always been competitive, even in things that I suck at. That's actually I'm more competitive in those things because I have no actual ability, so I have to like make it up for in like I don't know aggression in some way.
That's interesting.
What's some stupid thing that you've like been competitive over? Because like you're talking about, I'm weird and like weird niche things and all this stuff. Like, is there anything in your mind where you're like, you're getting into it. I know I shouldn't be competitive about this, but I am going to be. Like, is there anything like that's on your mind that you're thinking about?
So okay, there's one that's kind of recent. So you guys have played Madden before, Madden
Yeah,
football.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to play it a ton when I was a kid, but I think the last Madden that I played was 2005.
Okay.
Right, this is 21 years ago. One of my fellow instructors, friends, and training partners, Josh Johnson. He was like an incredible Madden player. Like played online, like was really really good. Not just good amongst friends, but like actually very good at this game. And I was talking shit to him for like 3 weeks about how I would smash him in this game, and we got into it. Like, I mean, we're jawing at each other, and he finally brought his, finally brought his Xbox in to the gym, and we played. He spanked me up and down the mat, or not up the mat, but in the game
on the virtual field.
Yeah, on the virtual field, and I'm like, I'm still talking shit to him. Like, I'm going to beat him next time.
Okay.
But it's these things, like things I have no business being good at, and then I'm not good at. Those are the things I'm the most competitive about. I don't know why. Maybe, I have no idea.
Do you think like you just so you don't get discouraged easily? I guess like you're always just up for the challenge.
No, that's one thing. I very rarely will get discouraged on something that I want to do. Almost never. It's really difficult. Like, I've lost. I tell this to my students all the time. I've lost way more than you'll ever compete, ever. You know, I look at the entire class. I've lost more than this entire class of 50 people, combined. You're not going to lose as many times as me, but I'm going to keep going because I just don't get discouraged very easily.
Well, how do you do? What do you do if you have a loss? Like, how do you recover from that, or like you just pass it on, just go on to the next one?
Yeah, we're just going to the next one. I lose all the time. I'm not. I think I'm pretty good at jiu-jitsu. I can compete at a higher level. But I fight guys who are some of the time the best guys in the world. And if I quit after losing to those guys, or even guys before that, because obviously I've lost to people who suck. Then I just wouldn't be where I'm at. I just stuck around long enough because I was okay with losing to a certain extent. Not okay with losing, and then I'm not going to change my approach and not try to get better. But I was okay with losing if that was going to help me get better at jiu-jitsu. I lose all the time. I put myself in positions where I don't always have a good chance of winning, because I think that that's going to help me get better for my future. I'm 31 years old now, but I think I can compete for another 5 to 7 years at a high level. Like Wagner has been doing that. He's 38, 39 years old. He's number 1 in the world at 185 pounds, or he was at least, earlier this year. Like, I can do that. If he can do that, I can do that. So if losing to the best guys in the world right now is going to help me get to become the best guy in the world 3 or 4 years from now, I'm always going to put myself in that situation. That's why I do the open class all the time, because I don't get to, I get to fight some guys that are, really, really good, and they're really big, and sometimes I beat them. And I love that. That feeling is incredible when you beat a guy much bigger than you, who's supposed to be much better than you as well. And usually that's where I do the best, actually, is in those open class divisions. But sometimes you become the nail and you get hammered, by a bigger guy, sometimes a smaller guy. But I don't mind, I'm always trying to win. So it's not like I go in there with the mindset of it's okay to lose. I don't. But if I do lose, I'm not going to quit.
Yeah, I think that's a thing that a lot of like newcomers don't really, when they get too wrapped up in winning and losing, they don't understand. It's like I was talking about it the other day, even with the guys in the gym. It was like, it's that paradox. It's like you've got to go after things, because like you're a pretty aggressive grappler when you play. Like when you compete, like you're not boring. Like it's not like, if your name pops up, because I've watched some of your matches, I'm like, they're fun matches to watch. If I'm passing by, I'll watch one of your matches. So you'll go after it and try to go for the win. But you got to go after it. But then when you lose, it's like, it's not that you're okay with losing, because none of us are okay with it, but you just understand it's a part of it. And it's like, you got to roll, like the win and the loss doesn't necessarily matter so much. But then when you do lose, you still got to take that magnifying glass to what happened and figure out what you did. It's a weird dance. And I don't feel like you really understand it until, like you said, you've been in so many matches where you've won and lost that at that point, like someone will say, like, someone asked me one time recently, they said, how many matches have you had? I'm like, bro, I don't even know at this point. I've been going for 20 years competing between wrestling and jiu-jitsu. I have no clue. It's all kind of a blur at this point. I'm just competing because I like testing myself every now and then. I like competing, and that's it.
Yeah. It's and I don't always manage it very well. Sometimes I'll lose and I take nothing from the loss, but I'm always, my long term, right, on the macro scale, I'm always trying to, but we always mess up. I mean, like, that's why we lost. We lost because something didn't connect, right? And so, I hope hope people don't take it in the way that I'm always learning, I'm always getting better after every loss. It's not always the case. Sometimes you don't get better. But on the long-term scale, for sure, I've gotten tremendously better for losing and for winning. You know what I mean? You say you win or you learn. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't learn anything. You know what I mean? But you have to try at the very least. And maybe it doesn't happen after that one loss, but eventually, if you stick to it long enough, you have no choice. You're gonna learn. You have no choice. You know, you're just in it. It's the people who quit. Those are the people who don't end up getting what they should have out of it, I guess.
Has there ever been a match where, because I've got a few in my memory where like I lost for a very particular reason, and then like later on, maybe a year or two or whatever, I competed in that same situation, presented itself in another match, and I was able to win because of the loss that I had. Are there any in your mind that you can think of that have happened that way, where you made this mistake or they did this to you and then that you lost, and then fast forward some period of time, you're like, I won because of that loss?
Probably every win of my black belt career has gone that way. Honestly, I can't think of something off the top of my head specifically, but I know what you're saying is going to be true, 100%. Because when I first started at black, when I got my black belt and I was competing, I was making so many mistakes that were okay at brown belt, right? And then they were shown to me through being smashed that those things were not okay to do, or they were not okay to allow it to happen to me. And so I made those adjustments. And then instead of getting smashed in those positions or during those situations, I would go forward and possibly win the match, or make a submission out of it, or defend appropriately. But yeah, that would definitely be a really good beginning of my career, black belt, to now. I've learned so much from being beaten, because I've got at black belt, I've probably got close to 100 matches now. Okay. So I've for sure I've learned a lot. I'm way better now. I'm probably twice as good as a jiu-jitsu practitioner now as I was when I first got my black belt.
How old were you when you got your black belt?
I was 27.
Okay, so you've had it for like what, 4 years roughly?
Yeah, about 4 years. Yeah.
Okay. I was. It's funny. I was the same age. So I got my black belt. I was the same way. I made so many mistakes. It's a different world, because like this, like when you go against black belts, you could be going against a guy who's been a black belt for a day, or that's been a black belt for a decade, right? Like or even longer. Sometimes you just don't know. And so some of those dudes are super crafty. What was the scene like? So I'll kind of paint the picture of why I'm asking this. In my area, Kentucky's not really the destination spot for jiu-jitsu, really, right? So it's not like people are going, I'm going to Kentucky to train. So when I was coming up, like I learned from a purple belt and eventually got promoted from, another black belt when they got it or whatever. But when I got promoted, there weren't really any competitive black belts in my area at the time. So I remember treading new water and being like, the black belt was such a big deal to me at the time, because I, just was something new, that there wasn't a lot of competitive black belts. And it was really like, it was disorienting to me a little bit. What was the situation for you when you started competing as a black belt? Were there other, like, I don't know what your coach was like. Were there lots of competitive black belts in the area that you had to look to, or were you somewhat treading new ground in your area?
No, it was definitely new. So I'm from Michigan, right? And that's where I did 99% of my jiu-jitsu. And, as a blue and purple belt, and then eventually a brown belt, anybody who was a black belt, I don't think there was a black belt under the age of 30. That would be the kindest way of saying it. I think maybe the 35, 36. Sure. So everybody was older, and they'd been doing jiu-jitsu for, like you, probably 20 years, maybe 23, 24 years. And, these guys were not competitive athletes. They were practitioners of jiu-jitsu. They loved jiu-jitsu, and they may be good at it, but it's not the same as being a competitive black belt, competing on the world stage and doing well. That's not taking anything away from them, because they were pioneers in our area. Somebody had to start, right?
It's a different focus. Yeah.
It's a different focus, right? It's a different focus. Everybody had jobs. You couldn't make any money doing jiu-jitsu. So it's not like full-time athletes were just, chomping at the bit to do jiu-jitsu from 1999, right? But for me, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And so it was me and a small handful of guys right around the same rank, a little bit of age as well. But like in our area, there was a handful of us. It was like myself, Dante Leon, who obviously is a world champion. He was in the area, so he's from like Windsor, which is 20 minutes across the bridge from Detroit. And then there was Khalil Falala, one of my training partners, and there's another couple guys who were pretty serious about doing jiu-jitsu. And we were all right around, blue and purple belt ranked together. I was the oldest out of this group, and I was still young, 22, 23. And these guys just decided this is what we're going to do. Right. Obviously, Dante took it the furthest so far. He's, world champion, ADCC, fourth place and all that stuff and all the other accolades that he has. But, there wasn't any black belts to look up to. So it's like we had to make our own path. We looked at everybody else, everywhere else, and we're like, okay, what are they doing? How do we recreate that here? And luckily for a time, we were able to train together, because we were on different teams at the time. And only on the same team for a short period, but it was good to do that because there was a kind of like a singular focus that we had, and we were able to help each other get there to a certain extent. But the other thing that was good, and I'm sure you're gonna key in on this as well. A lot of the coaches that I had early on, white through brown belt, were very specific about the type of jiu-jitsu that they were teaching and that they liked and that they enjoyed, right? They were all about this very fundamental basic style of jiu-jitsu that was maybe good for MMA back in the day or, great for self-defense, but like, Berimbolo was looked at and scoffed, you know what I mean?
Sure.
All these other types of things were not very much put into the program. The program is what it is, and it's going to stay this way, and it works, right?
Yeah.
That's fine if that's what you want. But if you want to become a high-level black belt, that's never going to fly anywhere. And it doesn't matter if your program is the most up-to-date software right now. 5 years from now, that's thrown out the window. We've got new stuff that we need to do. And, a lot of those guys didn't want to do that because they're older. They already did it. You know what I mean? Why do they have to learn anymore? Why do they, I get it. I understand. But for me, that couldn't work. So I had to learn how to teach myself jiu-jitsu. And it makes me very difficult to coach, actually, unfortunately. But it allowed me to look at jiu-jitsu in a slightly different way that I had to practice over and over again. Not necessarily practicing the jiu-jitsu, but practicing teaching myself and looking at what other people are doing and how can I do that here with the limited tools that I have. And the limitation was me. I was limitation, right? Because I wasn't this jiu-jitsu master that could just make up techniques whenever he wanted to. I had to figure it out through other people and then recreate it and troubleshoot it myself. So I think it helps me become an instructor, a better instructor, but it makes me a worse student when somebody else is coaching me because I'm like, I'm not paying attention. I'm trying to do it myself. So there's drawbacks, but I think we all have to do that in the Midwest at the very least. We all have to do some variation of that because there were black belts everywhere. You know what I mean? And the black belts that were black belts, they were older guys who've been doing martial arts their whole lives, but they had they were electricians and they had other businesses and they had families and stuff. They weren't going to come to the into the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock at night to work on techniques. So you could go to the local Naga event and beat the blue belts. Right? It wasn't going to happen that way. But we may do what we had, and the guys who wanted to stay in it are still in it. The guys who kind of wanted to be in it but were super talented, they're doing something else now. So kind of it was like a sifter a little bit.
Who do you think inspire your jiu-jitsu? Like, who did you model it from? Like, maybe what did you watch, or who did you train with, or even saw that was like really inspirational that maybe you modeled your game after?
I really like Marcel Garcia. I never was, me and him never had the same, I never like really emulated his style, I guess. But I loved that he would always try to go and fight bigger guys. So I tried to do it in my own way. I didn't have the same capabilities that he did. He was a lot stronger than I was, especially in the lower body. And he was just so much better. I couldn't do the things that he did. So I had to find my own ways around it. So like I tried to get to the end points that he got to with my capabilities. And but I loved watching Marcelo Garcia. The Mendes brothers were amazing, but their stuff was like so alien to me that I'm like, I love watching it. Maybe some of it will come in certain forms, but I never really like stuck to one person. I'm just like, how can I make that, whatever that guy is doing, how can I do that with what I have? And I tried to do that a lot. So not necessarily completely copying somebody's style, because I just, I had too many deficiencies. My body wasn't super physically fit. I wasn't very strong in a lot of areas, and I didn't have great cardio. So like some of the other styles of jiu-jitsu just weren't for me. So I just tried to get to the same endpoints that some of these really great grapplers like Marcelo Garcia, Braulio Estima, and Tanquinho, and try to get there through random ways that I found.
Yeah, as you got, I mean, like you do like a lot of that front headlock stuff. You go for, guillotines a lot, and you're also pretty well versed in leg locks. I mean, those are important, and they're very, leg lock game is obviously exploded, and so you got to really know what you're doing, especially on a high level.
Yeah, I didn't learn how to do any leg locks until I was a brown belt. So it was really I was really annoyed with myself that I allowed it to go that far. I knew how to do a straight knee bar. I kind of knew how to do a really terrible toe hold.
It was all normal back then, though.
Yeah, there was all the, but it just, I don't know. The ways that I learned were not that great, and maybe the way that I learned it, not necessarily the way that I was taught, but the way that I was learning it myself wasn't great. But I would, there was a guy, Dean Anaya, he was a blue belt at the time at a different school, and I rolled with him at an open mat, and he caught me like 5 times, 6 times in leg locks. And this guy is like, I think he was smaller than me at the time, maybe a little bit smaller than me. But he was a blue belt, like maybe a brand new blue belt. And I was a competitive brown belt. I'd already won the open class a couple of times at IBJJF events at brown belt adult. And this blue belt's just, I couldn't stop him from, heel hooking me. And I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't know how to go about it. So I just kept going to these open mats and just kept rolling with him. And he may have caught me 200 times over the course of, however many months that I did this. And it was so frustrating, but it was I knew that I had to do that because there's no other way I was going to learn it, because nobody else was doing them. In Michigan, nobody was doing leg locks in Michigan, except for like maybe this guy and a couple of his teammates, but his teammates weren't as good at them. So it didn't hit the same way. And so I just let this guy I didn't let him. He hooked me a million times, and I kept coming back for more until finally I figured it out. And then I started to learn them myself. And then I had brought Craig Jones in for a seminar at the time at the school that I was a part of, and learning them from him, and then just continuing my education with like John Donaher in New York. And now I'm comfortable. I'm not a leg locker by any stretch of the imagination. I think I'm pretty well rounded, but I'm definitely competent in them now, which I'm thankful for. But it takes years. This is not it's not a quick game.
Yeah, when you were saying that story, do you may know him? I mean, he's a pretty good competitor. Joe Bays. Do you know him?
Yeah, I know Joe.
So Joe, I met Joe the first time I was at a tournament. I was a purple belt, and this is like way back in like 2007, I think. And we're there, and we're getting ready to compete. And the guy there was nobody in my bracket, my division, but there was a guy above me in a heavier division. It was Joe, and at the time Joe was sitting at like 225, and he's very like, he was fluffy, and if you meet Joe, he's like, hey, how you doing, man? He's super nice, soft spoken. And they're like, do you want to compete against this guy? I'm like, yeah, whatever, I'll let me dust this dude real quick and get the win. And I go in and I get heel hooked once, and then I'm like, then they do best 2 out of 3. He heel hooks me again, same position. And I'm like, shit, what's going on? So then I went down and I trained with him. I was like, dude, I gotta learn this stuff. So I like immediately went down there the next week, was training with him, and it was one of those things where it took, getting heel hooked a bazillion times, but from doing that, you kind of figure it out a little bit, and you start to kind of get your mind thinking a little bit differently, which I think was like the first step for me, like getting into leg locks a little bit more, at least understanding them to some degree.
For sure. And the other thing is, I was conditioned to be terrified of heel hooks. You know what I mean?
They're dangerous.
They're dangerous.
Yeah.
They're dangerous. You can ruin, you can end somebody's career with a heel hook. This is like, we were conditioned to learn this. And I don't blame my instructors for that, because they were conditioned the same way that they conditioned us unknowingly. Right. And I'm sure that their instructors are, you know what I mean? It just went down the line. Leg locks are cheap and they're dangerous and you can't control them. And until you go get somebody who can.
Yeah.
And you know, if you get heel hooked 200 times, you're eventually going to know where you could be. As you know, if you got to the point where you've been heel hooked 200 times, whoever you're training with is being very nice to you, and they're not blowing your ankles out or your knees or anything like that. So, you know, I teach my white belts now how to heel hook people and how to get out.
I do the same. Yeah.
And I can't believe, it's taken this long for that to be the case. I mean, obviously there are schools who, like, I'm sure Joe was teaching his guys back then, whenever that was, to do that, maybe at the white and blue belt level as well. So there are pockets of that, small little pockets all over the country and probably the world. But as a whole, why wouldn't you teach them that? Like this, if it's so dangerous, you should expose them to it sooner rather than later. Like I was a brown belt. I got my ankle popped by a random masters competitor who is 30 pounds lighter than me at, or maybe it was a purple belt, but at a, ego tournaments, James Klingerman. At a random one. I had literally just come back from Nogi Worlds where I had taken second place. I got heel hooked by like a 36-year-old, 150-pound masters competitor. I don't even know what rank he was. He definitely wasn't. He wasn't past purple belt, and he hooked me, popped my ankle, and I didn't know what to do. Like it was my fault that my ankle popped because I'm sure I did something stupid. I can't remember what it would have been, but and I was just like, okay, well, I don't have to worry about that anymore because I'm going back to IBJJF competitions. It's never going to happen again.
Yeah.
Well, now here we are in 2021. Yeah, right.
Well, I think the other thing too about it, because I agree with you, like the way that we learned them back in the day, I don't think that the people that learned them, they didn't have enough exposure to the leg locks to really understand how they really worked anyway. So back when I first started, it was basically you would just like drop on an ankle and you would like go bananas to try to pop it. Whereas like now, like for instance, I teach the guys and we all understand, like for instance, if we do a heel hook, you teach and educate people, okay, well, this is the direction you can move. And when you catch the heel with these things, this is where you stop to basically assert control, just like an arm bar. We don't take an arm bar and pop it, right? You get control and you hold and say, hey, I got you. And likewise, if you put some random person who's never seen jiu-jitsu or never trained, you put them in a kimura, they're probably going to pop their shoulder out because they're going to start fighting in some weird way. Like some of the police officers that we have used kimuras before to try to control someone's arm or remove a weapon from that arm. And they'll like pop their shoulder out because they don't know how it works. If someone doesn't know how a heel hook works, or if they don't know how an ankle lock or a knee bar works and they twist the wrong way or whatever, things are going to happen. But if you educate them, I was actually having this conversation with a guy that he was visiting and this morning, and I was like, again, I'm from Kentucky. Everyone owns a firearm, right? And it's like it's like a firearm. If you understand and you're educated with them, you understand how to clear the chamber, make sure it's a safe thing. It's fine. But not teaching leg locks in today's like landscape, it's like having guns everywhere and not knowing how to use them properly because you have YouTube and all these courses and everything's out there. And so these white belts will learn it one way or the other. It would be better that you teach them how to do it safely and properly so that this way they understand how to tap, how to get caught, when they're caught, all that stuff. But I think just back in the day, nobody really knew. So it was just easier instead of saying, I've got a problem that I need to fix. I'm not knowledgeable about this. They're just bad. They're bad leg locks.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And there weren't as many resources like there are now. They didn't have all these instructionals that you could learn from John Danaher or Gordon Ryan or some of these other incredible leg lockers where you could say, well, definitively, I trust this person. And if they say this, at the very least, I'll trust them at face value and I'm going to practice it. There was no way to learn from. Like, if you guys ever watch Sakuraba's Instagram?
Oh, yeah. It's great.
You see, I mean, if you just saw that, obviously if you don't speak Japanese and you don't know Sakuraba as a goofball, and you saw that, and you saw how the way that he's putting submissions on his ukes, and you didn't have anywhere else trained, you just showed to a gym, you think that you just rip everything, because he's doing it as a joke, but we just didn't have the capability. We didn't have the capabilities of seeing people who knew what they were doing very often.
Have you watched any of those old catch wrestling like DVDs or anything?
Yeah.
Never watched DVDs. I've seen clips on all the different Instagram pages and stuff.
They
I've
have
seen,
they have like the shoes on too. Like,
Oh,
Well, I'm
yeah.
saying, like, because you're talking about ripping submissions.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, it's just it's not like this nice tap that we do. They're like grabbing. We're just gonna grab this and put
Yeah.
it in.
It's interesting. I did judo as well, right?
Okay.
Which has submissions, and judo players are the meanest people when it comes to putting on a submission.
Mm.
I think it's one thing that I don't know who would have started. I'm sure it was the Gracie family at some point. I don't know who, but like the gentle part of the submission, the control part to the very, very end without breaking your opponent's arm, right? Or popping them every time you want to catch them. In judo, they don't give a fuck. They don't care. They will break your arm in competition. They don't care. Like, they literally have absolutely zero care. It's not conditioned in them like it is in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes or competitors or practitioners. My guys, all my students, and this is because I was taught this way, we don't crank on anything. If we're competitive, if we're rolling two competitive guys are rolling really hard with each other, we're still not going to rip a submission off. Like where we know 100% we're going to jack this guy up, right? There is none of that in judo. In judo, it is like, you give me your arm, I will break it. You can be tapping, but I have to wait till the ref says this. And it's bad. It's really, I mean, it's their sport. So I'm not gonna talk smack about it, but it's very different than what we do in jiu-jitsu. And I'm sure catch wrestling is the same. And maybe one came from the other. I don't know. But some of these other grappling arts, they have no chill, zero. Like when it comes to the safety of your opponent, even if that opponent is trying to hurt you as well. I think we all, for the most part, are not trying to break our opponent's leg or trying to break our opponent's arm if we can avoid it.
Right.
Why do you think that is in judo? Do you feel like it through the instruction, or is it like, just why do you think that is?
So I only trained judo for a short time, actually, like for a year, but I trained with an incredible coach, and I did competitions. So I just want to get that out of the way. But I think it's not necessarily because they're bad people, but judo is huge. I don't know if you know how the scale of how many judo players there are in the world, but there are. It's massive. I believe in Brazil alone, there are 1 million judo players. 1 million in Brazil. There are more people doing judo in Brazil than there are doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So to keep that, as a perspective. In Japan, there are, I don't know, I couldn't even tell you that.
Well,
I'm sure they have
school. I mean, like,
it's curriculum.
I had several Japanese students train with me who were they did not consider themselves judo players, and every one of them knew how to do a drop tsunagi, right? It was just like they were just taught to them in schools. Yeah,
absolutely. And so that being said, it's this global sport, right, of some of the toughest countries in the world that are good at it, right? So you have the Eastern Bloc, you have like the Bulgaria, you have Serbia, Bosnia, all these countries. Then you have like this Mongolia, Japan, China, Korea, and then you have these Georgia, Azerbaijan. These are hard people, right? And if their only way to be successful is to be incredible at this one sport, right, where you have to throw your opponent through the mat, or submit them with a very, very fast submission, because you don't have time to set it up like we do, right? You have a very short amount of time to make a submission happen. Once your partner lands on the mat, you have to kind of go hard. So partly it's in the rules, and partly on a global scale, a guy from Georgia, who can win a bronze, silver, or a gold medal in the Olympics, he's going to do anything to kill you, anything, right? We're a lot more, here in America. I mean, like, even if we won a gold medal in the Olympics, it's not as, what I mean? Like, it doesn't change our lives nearly as much as it does for somebody like that. They become national heroes, right? In a different way, right? It's a very different thing. And so I don't blame them. They should snap everybody's arm if they can, because everybody else is going to attempt to do the same thing. And I think because everybody's on an even playing field, everybody's doing this to everybody, it's okay. Right. I think it's very, I think it's difficult when you get a guy who comes into your jiu-jitsu gym and all of a sudden starts wrecking. That's why we get upset. If somebody comes into our gym and rips a submission on one of our students, we get upset. Of course, we're like, hey, This is not the deal. But if everybody was doing that, then everybody would be ready for it. And so we could defend ourselves at the very least, or tap very, very, very early.
Well, yeah, there's been a few submissions recently where guys in competitions, I think there was one with Gianni, got one, and a couple other guys where they just like got him and then whack went after him. And, you saw that, like, you go in the comments or whatever, and you're looking at people's reactions, and, again, it's a competition. So whatever's happened happens, but everybody was like, dude, not cool. Like they were, because like you said, it's not a part of our culture. It's a little different.
Yeah. That one. See, I watched that one. That makes me cringe every time I watch that submission because on one hand, that's not our culture. Maybe we shouldn't blow somebody without the ability to tap before injury. But on the other hand, this is a professional event.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think a lot of people don't take that as seriously as they should. Right. Now, and that event was Emerald City. I believe they gave $10,000 out.
Yeah.
When it comes to jiu-jitsu, $10,000 might as well be $1 million. You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of money for a jiu-jitsu practitioner. It's a big deal. Even for people who don't need $10,000, it's just it's some of the most money you can get. Right. And so I don't blame Gianni one bit for doing it, although it did make me cringe watching it.
Oh yeah, I didn't like watching it, but like you said, at the same time, I'm like, this is a professional match, guys. I'm like, this stuff happens sometimes. It's like you don't look for it, you don't want it to, but like you said, $10,000 on the line and your reputation, and this is your livelihood. Like,
Well, I think you're going to see a shift now, though. I think you're going to see a lot more of that. A lot more of that. I think you're going to see guys intentionally going faster on their submissions. They're going to train it, number one, in the gym somehow. Obviously judo players do it, but they're going to train it in some way, or at the very least, they're going to turn that switch in their head. But they're not going to care anymore. It's not going to be, because before it's always been amateur competition. 99% of the competition that you did, I'm sure, were amateur, just like myself, just like everybody coming up. They're all amateur competitions. We're even at black belt in the gi or without it, IBJJF competition. They're all amateur. But when you have these professional events under the lights and all this stuff, it's going to change. I'm gonna take a guess and say over the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see a lot more catastrophic injuries in matches. Did you guys watch Who's Number One?
Yeah.
The championship, the tournament.
Yeah. It was like the 16-man or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 8-man for three weight classes for men.
Yes.
I was there. Not competing, but I was there with my training partner Heisen, and
he did well, man. He did a beautiful shifted under old Orlando's hips, man, and did a great job getting him off balance.
He's a big fella too. Both of them are big.
Yeah, Heisen's not that big. Heisen's 215 pounds.
Just
6'5".
Yeah,
he's just long. That was a good match. That was a match that we really wanted for him, or at least I wanted for him because I knew he'd do really well in that matchup. But at that event, if you were backstage like I was, or if you talked to like Michael Sears, people in every round, somebody went out with a catastrophic injury. Like every round, somebody got annihilated. Like it was like The Walking Dead. I mean, they were carting people out of there because this event was giving $30,000 away. Is the biggest event next to ADCC. That's not going to happen until next year. So the biggest event of the year. You had people being number one, people were allowing themselves to get hurt. They were staying in things longer, right? Which I don't necessarily know if that's the best way to go about it, but you have very little time to react. But then you have the people like, I don't care that you're going to eat this submission. I'm going to make you eat the absolute worst case scenario of this heel hook, of this arm bar, of this shoulder lock, right? Just off the top of my head, Jessica Crane, who was in the female one of the female divisions, ankle was annihilated. I mean, I was right there. I was watching her, backstage, just destroyed. You had Tex Johnson slammed by Orlando Sanchez, like broke his back in some way. I don't know actually what the injury was, but
he's dealing with some injuries right now from that.
Oh yeah,
isn't he?
Yeah. I think he's got some things to say about like the whole no insurance thing too. I saw something on social media, but like his back was jacked up. Probably was before too, and then exacerbated from being slammed by a 300-pound Orlando or 300.
Well, being slammed and not knowing that, like again, it's like one of those things where if you know you can get slammed, you do things differently, and if it's not a part of the rules, you're going to do things differently. And so, like getting slammed when you didn't think it was a possibility of that
right.
It changes your positioning, and that can really lead to some. It's like doing jiu-jitsu if punches are involved. You just do it differently.
Yes. Yes. No, I agree. He would have underhooked the leg, or he would have let go. He wouldn't have taken a slam from a 350-pound Orlando. I don't think he would have. Maybe he would have. Who knows? But then you had Mason Fowler going out with a terrible eye injury, and what's his name? Josh Cisneros blew his knee out from that. Scissor takedown from Cade Rutolo. You just had so many bad injuries because it was such a high level event. Nobody was willing to give anybody a chance. And that's the way it should be. But mentally, I think jiu-jitsu practitioners and players are still in the amateur mindset as far as being nice to their opponent in some way. And also, like, at least, they're thinking, like, this guy's not going to try to kill me right this second. Or now they're just turning it over and we're seeing these things happen. So I think in a couple of years, you're going to see less catastrophic injury because you're going to see people defend more or tap earlier or give a position earlier, something to that effect. It's going to kind of even out in a way. It's going to get more to that level of, like, Olympic level, like, okay, well, no chill, zero chill. This is what I'm going to go for, but everybody knows it. I think not everybody knows it yet, and that's where this issue is coming from.
What's your mindset about that? Like, are you willing to? I mean, I guess if you're signing up for this competition, you must be willing to to do that if you have to, right?
I'll be honest. I really don't like hurting people. As far as, like, I like to make people suffer. I definitely like that, but I don't like to injure people. I really try to avoid it. And it's actually made my jiu-jitsu a lot better. I have a lot more control in my submissions because of it. But if I was in the Who's Number One championships and I was fighting in the finals against anybody and I had a deep heel hook, I'm taking that all the way to Mars every time. You know what I mean? Because we both should know. We both should know. And that person's going to do the same thing to me, right? And so I'm probably more willing to tap than somebody else. I'm probably more ready on that side of it because I know that I don't want to have a catastrophic injury because I want to continue to compete. And I'm okay with losing. Some people are not okay with losing. But I see that as taking a knee injury and losing is way worse than just losing. But yeah, I mean, I think at this point, if you're going to be in high-level competition, you should know. You should be okay with it because that's what the sport is now.
Well, I mean, that's what it's been for a long time. I mean, hell, you had Hodger and was it Hodger and Ronaldo or Jacare? Yeah, he friggin' broke his arm. He kept going, and and even there's been guys like Vinny Maglesh, like he's gotten his stuff. Like he fought at that really nasty armbar at one of the ADCCs and came out
against
of it.
Verdun.
Yeah, so it's like one of those things where some guys don't tap to stuff, and if you don't put enough pressure, especially in those kind of competitive situations, they may not just like tap out because you've got control. You've got to really put some pressure on it or take it beyond the point that you want to normally because they're not okay with tapping. I even had a buddy of mine. He went and trained with one of the Meow brothers, and the Meow brother had just got done competing and he'd gotten toe holded in a competition. And I mean, we're talking like big toe to the butthole, right? Just like straight all the way in. And everybody that was watching was like, oh man, his feet are so flexible. And then like he's training with him like the next week and he's got all taped up and everything else. And he's like, hey man, like when they're getting ready to move around, he's like, don't touch that foot, because it was all jacked up. And I wonder if some of those young cats that are like maybe allowing themselves to pop and get tore up. I wonder what the long-term, like what that does to your overall like shelf life regarding competitions. Cause you can only do that so many times before the accumulation of all this torn ligaments and twisted up joints is going to, add up at some point.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely affects your shelf life for sure, without a doubt, and especially for like I said, like the amateur athletes, blue belt, purple belt level, you know, I don't know about you, maybe you did, but I knew nothing about rehab, how to fix myself when I got hurt. My rehab was being young and taking like a couple rolls off and then going back in with a, you know, bum, whatever it was. And then eventually 6 months down the road, I forgot about it. And I don't even know if I forgot about it or if it's still there, but it's normalized.
It just becomes normal at that point.
It becomes normal, right? Yeah. That's and now as a 31-year-old black belt, I am constantly trying to fix what is wrong with me immediately, because otherwise I can't train. You know, this is the story of a masters competitor, I think, or, you know, somebody who's of master's age at the very least.
Someone who's been around for a while.
Yeah, somebody who's been around for a while. I mean, like, you can't do jiu-jitsu. I was actually talking to a student of mine today about this. He asked me. So his wife was the powerlifting silver medalist from the Tokyo Olympics, this past Olympics, and we were talking about professional athletes and jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. And he's like, you know, do you have any professional athletes come here? I'm like, I don't want professional athletes here, like true professional athletes, NBA players, NFL players. I want them only because it would be really cool to train with somebody of that caliber of athleticism. But I would hate to be the reason that they tear their ACL because they made a weird movement against a guy who was 160 pounds, and that guy, you know, hipped in at the wrong moment and they didn't know what to do, right? And so, like, jiu-jitsu is terrible for your body. No matter what it's terrible for your body. You'll be in the best, worst shape of your life if you decide to do jiu-jitsu for a long period of time. And the only way you can mitigate that is by fixing yourself after each problem occurs immediately. Or, you know, like I haven't had surgery. Luckily, I haven't needed to have surgery or anything like that outside of my eye. But, you know, we beat our bodies up so much. You know, every time you get a little bit hyperextended on the elbow, like that's going to stick with you forever. It's always going to be there unless you fix it immediately. And most of us don't fix it immediately. We just keep going, right? It's really hard for, you know, how hard is it for you to take a couple rounds off, you know, on a day that you know you should be training hard?
It's gotten easier as I've gotten older.
Right.
Because when I was younger, same thing as you, I would do it. And then he's a PT, he's a physical therapist. So I gained some stuff from him. And then eventually it was just one of those things where, dude, I used to never take rounds off. I used to never take days off. I never used to do that stuff. And it was something where, like you said, I found that, you know, like, I mean, imagine this, right? That when something hurts, if I focused on rehabbing it and like giving it the sort of attention it needed and took a little break from the hard training, it got better faster and it didn't stick with me as long. Go figure. So with age came a little wisdom.
But, you know, have you met anybody that didn't need to take those pops, to take those injuries first and then not deal with them?
Of course,
that learned it.
Never has to.
You have to. Like, you have to. It's like, well, you know, why would you fix something if you didn't know that it was completely and utterly broken? Right. Which I'm sure, you know, you hate you hate that thought process. But
I do it myself. Like, it's such a balancing act between like your competitive nature, like somebody that does what we do, and especially what you do at such a high level. Like, you just push through stuff, and then eventually you can't, and eventually you know. Like, if you get your ankle popped over and over, that tissue is never the same over time. It's just never going to be as strong, as resilient. So yes, if you can like reduce the cumulative damage on your joints over time, maybe how hard you train, tapering your training, you know, at times when you need to. But yeah, like jiu-jitsu athletes hate taking time off. And like, so for me, when I work with a jiu-jitsu athlete, that's the last thing that I basically do that if there's no other options on the table. Like, I'm trying to like, all right, go drill on your left side, doing half guard, whatever, you know, to see if, you know, you just have to work around it because you still need that, like that stimulus of training. And, but when you're a high level athlete, sometimes you'll feel like you're falling behind or you're going to lose something or you'll lose a step. But, you know, like Chewy said, those injuries can span, instead of like maybe 2 weeks really addressing it can 6 weeks, 2 months. I mean, we've got a guy with a rib injury. It's been, you know, two and a half months now. And it's back and forth yo-yoing, and it's tough, right? Because you feel you're better, and you
Mhm.
think you're better, and then you don't ease into it, and you go in
Yeah.
like 100%, and then all of a sudden you hurt it again.
Well, the thing that I find, because I still don't know the answer to this, and I don't know that I'll ever know the answer to this, but there's a balancing act, right? You have the scales here. You have your body, right? Your body, your injuries, and taking injuries, right? I believe taking injuries is not just as important, but it's important to become a high level competitor, not to be a high level practitioner. Okay, that's not the same thing, right? If you decide you never wanted to compete ever in your entire life, you just want to be really good at jiu-jitsu, take that out of the equation. But if you want to compete, you have to know your limits and you have to go past them a lot, right? And I'm not choosing every moment. Like I'm not going to schedule like Thursday afternoon, I'm going to pop my elbow, right? But you have to know that you can take it, right? Or else what's going to happen, and I know this because I've done it with myself, and I've seen many training partners who were literally never willing to pass out. Okay, not that I advocate this for anybody, but people tap the chokes really quickly compared to people who've never been choked unconscious will tap much quicker than somebody who has. Okay, I'm sure you've dealt with this with students or training partners. Like there's always that guy who doesn't care if he passes out. He's gonna fight you until the bitter end, and a lot of times he's gonna get out because you just don't want to choke somebody for that long because it's exhausting to do that, right? I was that guy. I didn't care. You could choke me unconscious all the time. I've taken it. I've gone unconscious probably 100 plus, 150 plus times over the course of the last 13 years because I didn't care. I knew where I would go. I knew my limit, and it never was very uncomfortable for me. So I would fight tooth and nail to continue fighting hands and trying to rip the lapels off of my neck to pass out or to get out of the choke. And the alternative was, I passed out, whatever, just wake me back up. It's fine. That being said, taking some elbow pops, maybe not knee pops, because that's a higher price to pay, but taking some elbow pops, taking an ankle pop on a straight ankle lock, if you didn't take those, as a blue and a purple belt and a brown belt, you're probably going to tap a lot more quickly at the black belt level than other guys who are comfortable, who know what that feels like, who knows how you're going to walk off that mat with a little bit of a limp and be okay with it and be ready to go to the next match. So there's a balancing act. How much damage are you allowed to take that will help you compete at the highest possible level that you can? And then what's going to ruin your career?
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer. I only know what's happened to me, and hasn't all been voluntarily. You know what I mean? I've taken pops that I did not want to take, and I've allowed pops to happen that I was okay with.
Yeah. It's
I don't
different
know.
for everybody too. It's different.
Yeah, for sure.
I think there's a lot of other things. How good is your strength? What are other things outside of jiu-jitsu that you're doing, right? Like, are you eating well? Are you getting your proper sleep? Are you, doing strength conditioning? Are you doing the right stuff outside? Because sometimes, jiu-jitsu athletes that are high level, that's all they do. It's kind of all they have time to do. So their bodies will break down faster because they're just doing this one thing. So you have to be able to look at other avenues of like strength training and conditioning as a supplement to your jiu-jitsu that actually will increase the longevity of your jiu-jitsu, not just training all the time. And that's different. Your body may be way more resilient to taking damage than somebody else's. You may have
Mine
stronger.
isn't.
Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
No,
but you're right. You're right.
Everybody's very different. And like to Chewy's point, like Chewy would get injured all the time, like consistently injured. And now like he like knows how to modify and alter his training, like to where it's like, he can still go hard and not get beat up and not feel not your body basically. Cause you can go to a point where your body feels like it's going to break down and you just keep going and then it does. Or you can get to that point, like you said, like that limit, and you say, all right, I got to take maybe a couple lighter days and then I can get back into it. So, I mean, even like cumulatively training at a high level, you know, competitive. That's why you see all these, you know, closer to tournament time, there's a lot of injuries that occur because you're such a high clip and intensity. You're really getting your body to that point where it's just to the breaking point of, you know, you don't want it to be injured, but you have to push it that hard because that way you know what it can take.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I do mostly is I will pick my training partners a little bit with a little bit more awareness when I'm really messed up. You know, I'm sure you know, Nick, you know, you're the instructor. I'm sure you are the highest level guy, if not, you know, if maybe you have some students who are really good as well. But you can go with a much wider variety of people than the blue belt who's in an injury position, who like, you know, who's still trying to recover. And for the most part, same with me. But like, if I'm really messed up, I can't train with Hyson. He's 215 pounds and beats the shit out of me. So I can't, you know, and I have too much pride to just be thrown around the mat. So I have to go a little bit harder. So I will choose when I'm not feeling it, really not feeling it, to not roll with him. And he understands that. He knows, you know, he knows the deal. But sometimes I'll train with different students at that time to get my work in, because I can defend myself for the most part with many of them. And then, you know, go back to the students that will give me much rougher of a time when I'm feeling better. That helps me typically. But
that's smart.
What happened to your eye? So we kind of brushed over, but I was curious, what happened to you said you messed up your orbital?
Yeah, I blew my orbital floor out. So not this bone right here, which is like the normal orbital that you see smashed on like you know, in the UFC and stuff. There is a small bone underneath the eye. It's called the orbital floor. So I was just coming off of a knee injury, came back from like a little bit of a vacation, and I needed to get that extra work in. So I'm like, I called Hyson, I called a few of my other guys. I said, hey, let's train it Tuesday at, you know, 1 p.m. Let's get an impromptu session in. So we're getting ready. We start rolling. I get one roll in, get my second roll in with Hyson, and you know, he's working to take my back. I do a forward roll away from him. He you know, stops me, kind of throws his massive hook in, and I rolled directly into his heel. So as his heel was coming, I rolled into it. His heel hit only my eye. Didn't hit this, didn't hit this, didn't hit this. Only my eye. So it pushed my eye all the way back. And it's called a blowout fracture. So it pushed it and completely blew out that orbital floor I was telling you guys about. And it set my eye back a few millimeters, I think they said. So my eye was sunken back a little bit. It's not super noticeable unless you're paying attention. So it's not like my eye was, you know, in my brain. But that hurt a lot.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Your nerve, like you could lose your vision. Like it can damage your nerve.
This whole part of my face is numb. It's been like that for months.
Whoa.
Yeah, it sucks. It's really annoying. It was my lip as well, but that got better. But now it's still here. I get these like phantom itches that I can't itch. It's really annoying. But yeah, that's how it happened. But luckily they were able to fix it. My double vision got better. Now I just have this to contend with this numbness for maybe forever, but I don't know yet. We'll see.
How long has it been since your eye injury?
That was at the injury happened at the end of July, the very end of July. But then the numbness was at a certain degree, and then the surgery set it off further because they had to cut through the nerve to repair the floor. So it's been quite a while.
So you had a knee injury, you had the eye injury, then you had COVID. How much of a span of all that was that in? The knee injury was at the end of June. Okay.
The eye injury was at the end of July.
Okay.
And COVID was at the end of September.
Bro, I don't know what it is. I was telling someone, because it's like anytime I have like a rough span with injuries or like sickness or whatever, it's like I'll go years without injuries. Like my last little string of injuries, knock on wood, I hope it stays this way, was like I had my ankle got popped during a wrestling practice. My nose got broken. Like when I shot in for a for a fireman's carry. And I mean, when I'm saying broken, is like my nose was over here, got shattered in 3 places, and then they repaired that, and then 3 months later to the day, it's my birthday, and I'm rolling, and then I plant my foot and tore my meniscus. I was like, within 3 months, it was just all coming on at once. So I don't know what there is to it, but like it's the old saying, when it rains, it pours.
I have a theory on this.
What's your theory, PT?
My theory is this. My theory is that there's a disconnect between your body and your mind. Yeah, your mind says you can still go 100%, but your body is not there. The timing's not there. There's not. That's where you see a lot of those injuries within. You're a black belt, right? You're not going to quit, but you see some of these white belts, maybe blue belts even, they get injured, they come back, they get injured again within maybe a week or two, right?
Yeah.
And then they never come back. So that's kind of a big, the thing is, how do you get some, because you haven't been able to train for a while, right? So you're itching. I mean, like this is like a drug to some people, especially this is part of our weekly routine, right? So that disconnect between like your mind and your body, when you come back, you have to have a ramp up period to get back to it. And most people, when they feel like, when the therapist or whoever says you're good to go to do daily things, normal life stuff, but not jujitsu. That's a different timing. You know, that's a huge thing that's lost there. So let me ask you this. How did you come back? So with all that said, after the string of injuries and COVID was more or less like, you know, not a physical, well, it was physical, but like you didn't, you know, damage, have to have surgery, anything like that. How did you come back? And maybe what are some tips that you have for other practitioners that want to learn how to maybe safely get back to training? And now you're getting ready to do the ADCC trials. How did you do that?
So shortly after the knee injury, maybe it was actually, no, it was after the eye injury. I couldn't do a lot of things, right? I wasn't allowed to train jiu-jitsu because I couldn't even blow my nose,
right?
Because the eye pressure. So I couldn't lift weights, couldn't do anything. So what I did was I started doing that the knees over toes program that maybe you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, in the time that it takes for me to be allowed to do it. Because I had energy. I had a ton of energy after the surgery. Like I wasn't in a position where I was like so messed up. It was like I felt normal, but I couldn't do anything. They wouldn't let me. Right. So I'm like, okay, I got to do like super low impact stuff. So I'm like, let me rehab my knee in a way that is different than all the normal stuff that I used to do, because I do that all the time and I still got hurt. So I started doing this knees over toes program, and I started getting into it. So it's been about 3 months since I've been doing that. And my knees feel better, but they always feel better. So I can't say for sure that they're much stronger, although I have physical therapists at my academy who tells me my legs are stronger in the ways that they can test, which is great. But I started doing that, but I didn't do this in a safe way. I came back after, like, I trained for 2 weeks before a match with Mateus Diniz. You know what I mean? So I didn't do this in the best way. So this is not the white belt way. This is like the do as I say, not as I do way of coming back. But I came back 2 weeks after 2 weeks of training that they allowed me to like do repetitions and stuff. And then I had my match with Mateus, and then I did No-Gi Worlds. And then now I'm just finally starting to feel better. But I had now 3 months of this program that I've been doing. I was eventually kind of ramping up my training. You know, not necessarily for ADCC trials. I was trying to ramp it up for No-Gi Worlds. And then I just went through, you know, but going through it allowed me to feel a lot better for this event than it did for the first one, for No-Gi Worlds, you know, a couple of weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. But, you know, I think ramping up is very important. It's very difficult to do. You know what I mean? Especially when, you know, guys like us, we don't have anybody telling us, hey, or maybe you have Nick to tell you to do this, but I have nobody to tell me, hey, you have to do this, right? I'm the guy. So like I tell everybody else what to do. Yeah. And sometimes I wish I had somebody that's like, hey, shut up. You're not training today. You know what I mean? It's hard to do it for yourself. It really is, you know? And I know that because I know the advice I'm giving to my students is much better than the advice that I'm taking from myself.
Well, it's also the time crunch too. If you got a match coming up, you're like, well, I gotta do something, you know? And you know, you don't want to back out. So like, got to do it. You know, it's interesting.
Yeah. It's, Yeah, I don't have a great answer for that because I didn't do anything in the best way, but luckily I feel good, But this is
Yeah.
more by, I think, by being lucky and just sticking around long enough and not having re-injured myself in some freak way, like my eye or getting sick again.
Yeah.
Well,
But
I think it was a good opportunity for you to address some injuries that you've been dealing with that probably would have been neglected, like your knee.
yes,
It gave you the time, like it forced you to like, all right, let's figure it out. And you're a smart guy. You looked up some stuff, you found some information, and you implemented it, and it worked for you. And
mhm,
that's,
yeah,
sometimes when people don't, like you said, it's just me. I'm the coach. I do this stuff. Like you have to figure that out and learn for yourself. And sometimes you're like you're the testing lab, and
yeah,
you go from your experience. But yeah, like rehabbing, you can't maybe train as hard as you want, right? Because you
mhm,
can't increase that pressure, can't get choked, you can't have the eye pop out or anything bad happen. So you have to
right,
modulate your training that way. And there's a lot of neurological things that happen too, like just how your nerves work and fire after an injury, like an
mhm,
ankle or something like that. You'll notice if you have your ankle popped, and then once it starts feeling better, try to stand on one leg, and you're going to
mhm,
realize your balance is not quite as good as the other leg. And that's a lot of
yeah,
it. Those nerves have been kind of affected. And
mhm.
it is important, and so that's some of that stuff too. With injuries, there's some neurological changes that occur. So that's important to think. It's not just physically that your tissue isn't as strong.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that I've definitely noticed in the past with other injuries. I definitely things my muscles don't fire off the way that they should. And
Sometimes.
yeah,
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 that's cool, man. Yeah, I wanted to ask you actually, like, one thing that I was kind of looking through your Instagram, and you were talking about you had competed against Andrew Wiltsey as a
hmm
buddy of yours. What's it
yeah.
like for you to compete against like people, maybe training partners or good friends of yours? Is that something? And Chew, maybe you can answer that as well. Like, what's that like? Do you go in there with the same intensity? Do you kind of have some reservations? What's that like?
So this is a slightly more unique situation because Andrew's a friend of mine, but we've never trained together.
Okay.
I've literally never touched him in a jiu-jitsu. I've never physically grabbed him in a way that we're like locking up to do jiu-jitsu. I've known him since he was a white belt, and I think I might have been a brown belt at the time. If that makes sense. I think I was,
Sure.
and he I've known Heath and him for a long time. I remember watching him compete against, or not watching him compete against, but I was at the same tournament where he beat a guy named Dan Borovic. And Chewy, do you know Dan Borovic? He was a Brasa guy from Chris Houston School up in.
Name sounds familiar.
He was a world champion at purple belt,
Okay.
a Nogi world champion at purple belt. He was incredible, so good. And Wiltsey beat him as a white belt
Hmm.
at the 5 Grappling in Chicago, the first 5 Grappling that there was, or I believe one of those events. And I was like, what? He was wearing Adidas basketball shorts. Like, I had to figure out who these people were because it was wild. And so I've just, through going to different tournaments all the time, I would just see Andrew and Heath and, Spatch and Alejandro eventually as they joined the team. I used to see them all the time. So I consider them my friends, but I never trained with them. So having a match with him was completely fine by me because we're doing jiu-jitsu. It's, like there's no animosity here. I could be super intense with my training partners, guys who I love, guys who I live with. I can do it with somebody that I've never trained with and, that I see in tournaments all the time, even if he is my friend. You know what I mean? I don't think I wouldn't do the same thing. I wouldn't have a match with, training partner like Khalil or Heisem though, not on that type of stage because these are like literally like my brothers, you know what I mean? But somebody who is not that close, yeah, sure. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I didn't know what the relationship was. I was just kind of saw that you guys kind of
Yeah, no,
knew each other, and I was just curious.
yeah, I know. Like Heath was like kind of bummed out about that. To me, he told me he's like, man, I didn't know that they were going to ask you to fight Andrew, and it kind of sucks that this has got the way it's got to go. I'm like, why? I'm like, this is going to be fun. This is great. We get paid. I'm on Who's Number One. Like this is going to be fantastic. And that's how I feel. I'm just a competitor. I don't need I'm like I don't need there to be bad blood at all. Like that MMA fight that you were talking about, your first pro MMA fight. Like for me, this is fun. I enjoy this. This is what I love to do. So competing against friends of that nature is totally fine for me.
Yeah, I think competing against people that you kind of like, or that you have, like even one of my last pro MMA fight, I remember the guy that I fought was actually really nice. Like before the fight, we were very respectful. I remember sharing I gave him an extra bottle of Pedialyte that I had after the weigh-ins were over. And then like when we fought, I mean, I'm trying to take his head off. But then as soon as the fight was over, it was like, man, like super nice guy. I've rolled with him. He's come to the gym before. And I like that. Even so in jiu-jitsu, even if like you like the guy, it's like we can go battle it out. But I would rather compete against someone I like than someone I don't like, because like if there's bad blood there associated, like I've had those situations happen before. I don't like it. It really it messes with like my rhythm and how I feel being on the mat, and does something I don't like. Here's a question for you, just from a coach to a coach. I always like to ask other coaches that have been in similar situations as me this question. How do you train yourself, or how have you trained yourself to learn new information, new techniques, whatever, in absence of having someone be there and say, hey, David, do these things or whatever? How have you trained yourself over the years? And especially when you were, a young black belt that's out there, and maybe you don't always have the toughest competitor training partners around. I mean, you've got some tough guys with you now, but obviously there was probably periods where you didn't have that.
Yeah. Luckily, I've always had at least one guy that could beat me down in the gym. I've been lucky about that. At least one guy, at the very least, so that's been good. That's been very helpful. But I'm very free with my jiu-jitsu as far as I don't care if I get, like I said, I don't care if I lose. I'm not going to ever try to lose, but it's okay if I do. In the gym, I'm always trying to do new things. Not always. I'm always open to losing a position if I'm trying to go for something that I'm not typically good at. I like to get better at jiu-jitsu as a whole and not just at the things that I'm good at. So I'll work on random things that I just saw online, or maybe I saw a student of mine doing, and I'll try to recreate it. And if I get my guard passed, or if I get submitted because of it, that's okay. So in cases like that, when I don't have, if my training partners are like of good purple belt level, right? Tough, solid, but maybe not totally, skilled enough to submit you regularly. I'll put myself in worse positions. I'll allow them to work from better position for them. They get a chance to work through, tougher defense, which I hope that I'm giving them. And I get a chance to work through really tough offense from a point of being like diminished. I'm already too far. Now I've got to work out of this. So I've always been okay with that. I don't like the idea of never losing to your students. I get submitted by my students all the time. Like I'm not that coach that you can say that there's nobody in my gym that be like, I have no chance of ever submitting coach. Like they all have a chance. I'll give them the opportunity. I'm not going to necessarily, tap for no reason. They're going to have to make me tap, but they'll get it eventually for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I always like to ask people about that and just kind of see how they train, especially like, again, you've had like, tough guys, but a lot of times, like you said, like in the Midwest, everybody's kind of having to go out on their own and figure different ways that work for them. So I'm always curious about that.
Yeah. It's tough, but it's fun. It's fun that way too, though,
For sure.
Do you, I wanted to know, like, do you have like a favorite tournament that you've done, or like maybe like who's number one's a big one, and maybe do you have nerves? Like how do you deal with that, like dealing with the nerves of the of being the lights, the being on flow grappling, all that stuff? How does that how do you handle some of that?
Nerves. It's a good question. I do have nerves, of course I do. But I do a pretty decent job of controlling them because of experience, because I've had so many matches. But being nervous is good. I did get to a point where I wasn't nervous for a little while. There was a stretch of time where I stopped being nervous, and I just competed terribly because I wasn't sharp enough. You know what I mean? But then also there were the times earlier in my career where I was too nervous. And then again, you compete like crap if you're too nervous. Sure. So, I've been able to balance that because for me, the joy wasn't just for winning. It was the actual competing part that I love to this day. And so I'm out there, I'm doing the thing that I love. win or lose, I'm doing the thing that I love. I don't love losing, but I love competing. So that I think has always helped me a little bit with my nerves. Plus the years of wrestling where I was terrible and I lost all the time. So like if you lose all the time in high school, that helps you buffer. It helps you with your adult jiu-jitsu career later on, because like whatever, you've already lost. You've already been
sensitized to it.
Yeah, exactly. To a certain extent, sometimes it stings, but
sure.
But it is what it is. So you figure out how to control yourself, especially when you did it when you were an adolescent or a teenager, like I did, and then all the way through my 20s, into my 30s now. You hopefully can figure that out. I did. I mean, I didn't have any like coaching to do that. It just happened naturally, I would say. But my favorite events to do, I would say. I have two. Who's number one for the individual aspect of it? It's fantastic. It's amazing. They treat you really well, and it's on the biggest stage Jiu-Jitsu has to offer, with the exception of ADCC. But it's really fun, and I just really enjoy the way they do the production and stuff. I get really amped up. I feel great. I love being under the lights. It makes me, I'll risk it all in front, under the lights. I'm going to give the best match possible under the lights. But my other favorite event is Quintet, Sakuraga's Quintet. That, and I'll tell you why. When you wrestled, did you wrestle as well?
Me, no, I did not.
No, okay. So when you wrestle, sometimes you're more nervous and more amped up for your teammate than you are for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's how I felt.
Yeah.
But under Quintet rules, it's 5 of you total, right? And there's a strategy that you have to go for as far as weight and stuff like that. But every person counts, and there's only 5. It's not 13. I don't know what it was in Kentucky, but in Michigan it was 13 weight classes, and you only have 5, right? And you're doing this under the lights. It's not in some high school gymnasium. You're doing this under the lights, and the Japanese fans are incredible, and the music and the production and the stage and all this stuff, and that event is like nothing that anybody's ever done. You know what I mean? As far as how it feels. And maybe because it's, I was in Japan doing them, and we won both of them, the ones that I participated in. So that also makes it, I think better for me. But
yeah,
cheering for your teammate, to win, and then he gets to continue to, keep going, or you get to continue to keep going. It's incredible. The rules are a little wonky because there's no heel hooks or anything like that, which I wish they would change. But that is a fun event, and I think it's really fun to watch. The only problem is if you watch the fight nights like that I participated in, you won't know really any of the other grapplers because they're pretty much Japanese, from Japan or like maybe from Korea and stuff. So they're not guys that you would really know very well. But if you just look at it for the actual participation of not caring who they are, it's so fun to watch. It's really, really cool. Yeah, it's great to participate in. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's cool tournament.
Yeah, I imagine the team atmosphere that kind of makes it. I've done a couple of like different random things like that before, where we'd have teams and they'd like head off against the other team, and it was interesting. It was fun. It was like similar to like you had this mixture of the jiu-jitsu solo thing with the wrestling thing with even almost like football, where your team, like you guys were actually doing stuff together the whole time. So
you did a tag team tournament.
Yeah, we've done the tag team stuff before.
Oh, I want to do that. I really want to do a tag team.
Oh, bro, it's a mess.
For sure. I'm sure. It sounds so fun though. I mean, as a fun thing, like I don't, like jiu-jitsu can be very serious, and competition can be very serious. But like sometimes let's just have fun and enjoy it. And I'm not the guy that's like keep it playful, because I like to train hard and I like to compete hard as well.
Yeah, I'm not a keep it playful guy either.
Yeah, but I enjoy the different ways to enjoy yourself while doing jiu-jitsu, while still going hard, right, in a competitive way.
Awesome, David. So you've got a couple products out. Can you tell us about those real fast? And then if people want to get a hold of you and follow you or train with you, where can they do that?
Yeah. So you can follow me on at at Garmo Flow AJJ on Instagram. That's typically where I put any content out, is usually on my Instagram. And I have a couple of instructionals on Fanatics. One of them is the front strangle mastery, so that I show like my art of the guillotine stuff and different front headlock manipulations. And then I also have an upper limb isolation DVD, arm bars and kimuras. Focused definitely on just like the arm attacks and stuff like that. I worked really hard on them, and I think they, I teach them to my students all the time, and they've been pretty successful in tournaments. So check it out if you guys are interested in those specific techniques. I own a gym called Assembly Jiu-Jitsu in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, right outside Detroit. If anybody's ever in Detroit, for work or anything like that, come by and visit. I mean, we're complete open door policy with everybody and anybody. We mostly do no gi, but we have gi classes, 5 classes a week, which is, no small amount, just in the gi. So come by, stop by. I mean, I love visitors. We get them pretty often for being in Detroit, and not in a big major city like New York or LA, but we always want more. So anybody wants to come visit, even if you guys want to stay just to come train, we'll make it work for you guys for sure.
Awesome, bro. Appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Dude, thanks for taking the time.
And good luck. All right, guys. So thank you for joining us on the podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you guys, I was just thinking about this. If you guys are currently on Instagram, or if you have YouTube and use those things, check out the Jiu-Jitsu podcast, Instagram and YouTube.
Oh,
yeah,
yes, do that.
Why not?
Why not?
Why won't you? You should.
You can get video content. So we got all our podcasts and clips are on there.
That's a weird thing with me. I like seeing, it's weird. I don't know what it is. I like even with podcasts, I like having the video option, even if I don't really use it that much. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that is. It's like, I don't mind listening to podcasts, but I find that I listen to most of my podcasts on the
YouTube, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I'll listen to several podcasts and they're like hours long, but for whatever reason, I like them when they're in the video form. I don't know what that is, because I don't even really watch video that much, just a little bit, even like I was really bummed out. And then Joe Rogan's is on Spotify and it does the video there. So which I'm happy about, but I don't like just listening for some reason. I like having the video form. So if you guys want the video form, you can get that on YouTube. And again, big thanks to our sponsors, Charlotte's Web, one of the premier CBD companies around. You can check out their products. Again, if you have not used CBD before, give it a try. I encourage people to try it. I'm a big fan of it. I'm a proponent of it. More often than not, when I give one of my students a sample of it, they go back later on and ask me what I gave them, and then they want to use it. And I've learned that from a lot of you guys who've listened to the podcast and send me emails that you've had this similar experience where you used it and you're like, oh, that was really awesome. I got this from it. This is what I felt. And so again, I encourage you guys, if you're interested, try it out for a month, see what you get from it. And again, you can go to their website at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu. You can save 15% on the order. Epic Roll. Again, if you didn't hear me on the original part of the podcast, be on the lookout for the Jiu-Jitsu rash guard and shorts coming out in the near future. But until then, if you want to check out some of Matt's gear that he has on his website, he has gear, apparel, everything related to Jiu-Jitsu, for Jiu-Jitsu by a Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. You can check it out at epicrollbjj.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu. Save 15% on the order. And then if you're interested in different things with strength training, like odd objects such as maces, or if you have some different ideas on maybe some metal, I don't even know what you'd call it, like metal workings, because he sent me like a belt rack.
Yeah,
I've got a belt rack that says Jiu-Jitsu on it.
Yeah, it's cool.
And he's made some maces with skulls on it, and so he's kind of open. So even if, and I don't know what he thinks about this, but if you have like some random idea of like some metal thing that you think could be made, you could probably send it to him. He might be like, let me try, because he's kind of like Pake's an artist. So he considers himself an artist that like takes metal and like turns it into something useful. And so first off, if you like the idea of like maces and you want to try some, you can check his website out at become-stronger.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu. Save 10% on the order if you're interested in maces and stuff like that. And then if you have any weird like custom ideas related to like metal or something that you might see, send him a message. He may be able to do it. I make no guarantees, but I just know that like from talking to him, he's a cool dude, and he's he's more of an artist than he is just like, I'm just going to hammer out some stuff. Like he enjoys the craft of it and trying new stuff. So check it out. And he's also got some other things that aren't necessarily maces on his website. Like I said, the belt rack, and says Jiu-Jitsu.
He's got like clubs, I think.
Clubs.
And he also has like a weighted sword.
Yeah. He's got that hammer.
Yeah, like Mjolnir.
He's got like
Which is kind of
he's got the Thor's hammer thing going on. So he's got some interesting stuff. So check it out at his website. And then again, if you guys want to support the podcast and get access to content that we've had over the years from the different guests, as well as videos and narrated rolling, things like that, you can go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And if you guys would like to get access to 2 free ebooks from me, 2 jiu-jitsu ebooks, one to build your jiu-jitsu game plan. If you think that's a good idea, I do. That's why I made the ebook. I have a game plan. I know what my game is. And I think it's a useful exercise for any jiu-jitsu practitioner to draw the dots and sort of essentially make a flow chart with their game so they know how everything works. If you think that's a good idea, and if you think it's a good idea to understand and have a process for implementing techniques from the most passive forms to the most active forms of using them, then you can get both of those free ebooks that I've created on my website at jujitsu.net/join, JOIN. When you go there, you sign up for the email list, my Chew Crew email list. You'll get 1 email from me, usually Monday through Friday. Sometimes it's on the weekends, and sometimes I send more than one. Just depends on what's going on. If I have any products launching, like when I was selling the Origin Gis this year, I was sending out multiple emails a day because I'm like trying to get through people's inbox. I'm like, look, get the gi because I don't want people to miss out. And it still happened. A couple people are like, bro, I didn't see the email till now, but most of the time you get 1 email Monday through Friday. But regardless, you get those free ebooks, and you can unsubscribe at any time, and I'll never send you an email back if you do so. I promise. And that's that. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Hope you had a good time. Got something from David, and again, he's a fun competitor to watch, and it was a pleasure to have him on, and it was a smooth conversation. So I think that's it. Oh, one thing I wanted to share. So he was talking about leg locks being dangerous and that we're conditioned to believe that they're dangerous.
Okay.
I remember one of the reasons why I thought leg locks were dangerous is because me and my buddy, we would like watch moves and we would just piece them together. And I remember my buddy was piecing together a heel hook, and he popped my ankle. And this is like, we were still training in my basement. Yeah. Oh, dude, popped my ankle. And I was terrified of leg locks ever since then, because my ankle was sore for like 2 weeks. I was like, because the only time I ever got put in a heel hook, I got popped. It was just because we didn't know what we were doing.
Sure.
And again, now it's like I get heel hooked all the time because I'm training with them. But I just thought that was funny. Not only are we conditioned, if you get improper use of leg locks, then they seem far more dangerous than what they are.
Well, if you've been hurt by way of, submission, like you may be afraid of it, or you also, we're afraid of what we don't know. We don't have knowledge of. And that's usually
right.
For us. That was one of the last things for me. It was one of the last, things I learned, like any kind of twisting leg lock.
Ignorance breeds fear.
Wiser words have never been said.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Very
true.
Yeah.
Very true. That can apply all across the spectrum.
That is one that's analogous to life as well, because I mean, you look at a lot of times the most fearful situations are the ones you have the least experience, the least amount of experience with.
Fear of the unknown. Yeah.
Fear of the unknown. Once it becomes known, it's like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was.
I can safely get in a heel hook,
mm-hmm.
apply it, get
mm-hmm.
it applied to me. That white belt's not going to try to trash my knee. Hopefully.
Yeah, by the way, we were talking about this. I teach white belts heel hooks.
Yeah.
And I let them get out of it. But unless we're doing situational rolling, if we're doing full rolling, I don't let them use them. Not unless they're 4 stripes.
Yeah.
4 stripes I will. And blue belts enough, but usually in the beginning, like they just learn them.
Yeah. Which is it's, but you're getting that like a little bit of experience with it. You're getting a little bit of initiation in it,
mm-hmm.
which is valuable, because at least like, at least know what that is. It's in your head. You know what that is. And you can always, now we were talking about instructionals, you can go and start to like, increase that knowledge base too at your own pace. Even if it's not something that's being taught in class consistently
mm-hmm.
or very much, you can still start to learn some at least some ideas. Even watching and just getting a sense for what proper movements are.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing is for me, like with the leg locks, when I didn't teach leg locks, more people got hurt by leg locks. Like I remember having several white belts who would see an ankle lock or see some leg lock on YouTube or in a video, and they would try it, and then the other guy wouldn't know what to do, and they twist out and tear their knees up. Yeah. Whereas once we've taught more leg locks, we've had like very few injuries related to them, because people know when they're caught, They know when to tap. They know like how to get it to the end range without going too far.
Yeah.
To me, again, I just think of it over and over again as like a weapon, right? Like, again, if you have been around firearms before, you know, before you ever go shoot the gun, you got to learn how to like be safe with it.
Yeah.
Where to point it, where not to point it, where to keep your hands when you're not shooting. All these different things go into it. Weapon safety is super, super important if you're going to have them around. and then eventually you go shooting, whatever, that kind of thing. But again, to me, like not teaching leg locks at this point and not covering them in some fashion, even if it's just to understand them, to not get caught in them, it's like being in a room with a bunch of firearms and not knowing the first thing about safety related to firearms, because otherwise people are going to get into that information one way or the other. You can't put that genie back in the bottle. So it's best that we just do it right from the get-go and teach it. And plus, it's like I said, even me, who thought they were dangerous because of my original experience with them, as I've gotten into them, like, they're not that dangerous. They're just not. Like, as long as you have good training partners that, you know, are doing it for the same reason as you, they're not that dangerous. It's not at all.
Yeah. I think, you know, any submission can get cranked and cause injury for sure. So it's just, you know, knowing more and knowing what not to. I did have a situation. This was when I was a blue belt. It was a guy that I didn't know at the gym. We were rolling. Like he maybe was there like once or twice. And I remember I put him like in a toe hold and he twisted like the wrong way. And I hurt his knee tear. And I was like, oh my God, I felt so terrible. And I think I maybe even talked to you about it. And you're like, dude, you can't, like, you didn't do anything. I basically just held it and
he tried to twist out.
Twisted like when you have a toe hold, you know which way you roll.
Yeah.
Right. Rolled the opposite way. I was like,
bad news.
You know, by the time I let go, it was done. So yeah. So just, you know, knowing that, or if you don't know, just tap. You know, just tap and then ask. Perfect time to ask your training partner, hey, what did you do? How do I get out of that? How'd you get that? So it's always a great learning experience. So
guys, thank you for being on the podcast with us this week. Talk to you next time.